Do you love Fortnite? Do you hate Fortnite? Have you wondered, is there something better than Fortnite? I think that there is. The Darwin Project is better than Fortnite, and I'm going to give you my top 10 reasons why. In at number 10, The Hunger Games. If you haven't seen the movies, at least, go check them out. Pretty sure you'll enjoy them. This game, the Darwin Project, it captures the same feeling that you feel watching or reading The Hunger Games. Not just watching or reading The Hunger Games, but actually being a participant in them. Because in the Darwin Project, you are a participant in a lethal contest which is set up for the entertainment of others. It's really a great, enjoyable feeling, and it adds a lot of atmosphere to this new entrant into the Battle Royale genre. At number 9, there's more to do and think about. Fortnite, for the most part, is kill or be killed. There's the build element, I suppose, which is awesome, but generally it's kill or be killed, which is a part of Darwin Project for sure, but there's a lot more going on as well. Being like the Hunger Games, there's a massive survival element to the game as well, so that gives you an awful lot that you have to think about, that you have to consider, and an awful lot that you have to do, on top of worrying about other players as well, worrying about not getting killed and killing them yourself. You've got to manage your resources, you got to think about gathering and crafting. There's a huge tracking element to the game as well, whereby you track down other players in order to hunt them down and kill them, but also on the flip side of that, other players can track you and you'll know when that's happening, so there's the whole escaping or turning the tables when tracked element to the game as well. You got to prepare for the late game in a very particular way. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that later on. And there's also the element of adapting to changes that are made by show directors. Show directors are a phenomenal part of this game, and again, I'll talk to you about that a little bit later on. At number 8, we have more strategic. There's more strategy involved in Darwin Project. Because of the survival element, it brings much more to the table to consider. Your loadout as well has a big impact on how you play. When I say your loadout, you have pre-game choices where you can select different item options, different gear items. You can select different weapon upgrade options. You can select different electronic options as well. And your pre-game loadout in this regard is really going to have a big impact on the strategy options that are available to you as you play the game. You got to decide as well whether you go for early kills or whether you focus on crafting up through your own gathering or crafting up the items within your loadout. Planning for the late game is really about deciding whether you go for those early kills or focus on crafting up, and you've got to decide which is going to be your best route to have maxed out items and options in your loadout later on, because in the late game your opponent or opponents, there might be two, they're almost certainly going to have maxed out items as well, so you better be at a huge disadvantage if you don't. So that strategic element comes into it right from the beginning, and choosing how you're going to get to that point in the late game. Then you also have to consider what are you going to use your electronics for. The electronics they're kind of like superpowers. So you'll get electronics in game, either they'll be dropped randomly or show director will be able to drop them in strategic points, usually to encourage a fight or to reward a player for a particular skill or play style that he has identified early on in the game. Do you go straight for the electronics when they're dropped, or do you let others get them and then kill them? So there I've covered a number of strategic elements the Darwin Project has to offer that Fortnite doesn't. There are more that you will learn as you play the game, and they will be suited to you based on your particular play style. So let's now move on to the next reason why Darwin Project is better than Fortnite. In at number 7 is the smaller field. Darwin Project has a field of 10 participants, 10 combatants, versus your more typical 100 that's in more of the Battle Royales that are out today. The difference in having a smaller field, the difference in being faced off against 9 opponents rather than 99, is that really it makes you feel more involved in the game. It makes it feel as if your choices that you make within the game have consequences. And hunting and tracking and trapping are big parts of the game. Because you've got a smaller field, there's more space between you and your opponents when you land first, and later game, although the field is getting smaller, there can be still some distance in between. So hunting and tracking and trapping are a huge part of the game that you don't necessarily have in other Battle Royales, and you do not have in Fortnite. Really, with the smaller field, it feels like you have a real impact on the game, and you're more than just a number. You're more than just one more pleb on a massive field. In at number 6 is the fact that Darwin Project is just more fun than Fortnite. First of all, it's less frustrating. So say you're playing Fortnite, you're doing very well, you get all the way, you hit top 10, pressure's mounting, you take the game more seriously, you're very focused, you go top 5, this is great, top 2, and then you're dead. Coming second in Fortnite is incredibly frustrating because you've almost beaten out a field of 100, and next of all you're dead and you get nothing from the game. Doesn't have the same effect. That just doesn't happen with Darwin Project. The field is 10 players, and the game is more involving and more enjoyable, so you can come second in Darwin Project and still have had a really, really good game. Because of that lack of frustration, it doesn't have the same impact on people, particularly young people. You might have seen some things on the news on that about countries talking about banning Fortnite, and I know in my other work that it does have a big impact on young people, but also older people who maybe have difficulties in controlling their emotions and in managing that frustration and anger. That happens a lot with Fortnite. That's one of the really big criticisms of Fortnite, and that just, in my experience so far, that really doesn't exist in the Darwin Project because it's just fun, and as I said, you can even come second and still have a great time. I have never had so many laughs playing a game as I have had playing the Darwin Project. Between the way the game is set up, between what happens in the game, what you can do in the game, and between the interactions with the show director and also the other players, it's just ridiculous how much fun this game can be. And that brings us on to number 5 in the top 10 reasons why Darwin Project is better than Fortnite. So in at number 5 is the voice chat. Voice chat in Darwin Project is very engaged, it's very active. The other players and the show directors are typically very friendly, very funny too, and most people are just enjoying themselves and having a good time. When you compare that to other games, if we compare it to Fortnite, unless you're in a squad in Fortnite, you're not really getting communications and voice comms, and your maximum squad is 4 players, so you could be having a game with a group of your mates and having a good time, but outside of that, you're not going to get entertainment value from voice chat. Whereas in Darwin Project you can interact with everybody pre-game. There's a good amount of pre-game stuff that goes on, and in the game you can interact with the show director, and you can also interact with other people who are in your zone. So if you're having a fight with somebody, there's good interactions that go on there as well. And compare it to maybe Overwatch, which is a game that I have played an awful lot of. The voice communications in a game like that, they can be incredibly toxic. So you can have some good games where there's good voice comms, but you'll also have an equal amount of games where there's really toxic voice comms and there's a lot of hostility and negativity and criticism and sometimes just downright verbal abuse that goes on between different players in a game like that. You just don't get that in Darwin Project. I think I've played about 100 games, and I've had two games where there were any kind of negative comments whatsoever, where anybody was being a DICK. Typically speaking, it's not like that at all. Typically speaking, the voice chat is really, really good, and it's a great element, and it's a really big part in my mind of what makes this game so much fun and what makes it better than Fortnite. So on to number 4, and that is better mechanics. First of all, the biggest difference and what struck me the most in the beginning is that unlike Fortnite, there is no ridiculous constant jumping around like the Ever Ready Bunny on amphetamines. It looks and feels a lot more real because the movement, whilst it's still a video game, the movement seems a lot more typical of what you might be doing in that situation. The constant jumping in Fortnite, it just looks ridiculous, and it drives me nuts. Another aspect of the better mechanics is that it relies on the fight mechanics. They rely on really, really excellent timing to land your shots, and also to block shots as well. You can block axe shots and you can block arrows that come in as well with your axe, so it relies on really good timing, and I find that that's an excellent element to the game. Strafing and stamina management are hugely important as well, and evading and blocking an axe or an arrow is just as important as landing hits with an axe or an arrow. With the axe, there are multiple ways to melee, and that adds some very interesting strategies as well. There's a really cool knockback mechanic also that also adds interesting strategies, like you can knock people into lava for a straight out kill, or you can knock them out of a safe zone, or you can knock them straight off a cliff if they're hunting you and you've got low HP. So that adds some really cool strategies to the game as well. And the ranged combat is all projectile, so there's no hit scan in this game at all. And I find that because it's all projectile, it's both more challenging and more satisfying at the same time. So I really feel that the mechanics in Darwin Project are overall an awful lot better than the mechanics in Fortnite. First in on the top 3 is that the game is less reliant on RNG than Fortnite is. There is a small element of RNG versus a massive element of RNG in Fortnite. In Darwin Project, your RNG comes from chests, of which there is only a small number. You get items from teardrops as well. There's also a small RNG element where electronic is dropped automatically by the game. The ones that are dropped by a director, they're more purposeful. That's really where the RNG dependence stops with Darwin Project. Overall, the gear system is just far better, and instead of being reliant on randomness, everyone starts equal. Everyone starts with the same items, which is a bow and an axe, and nothing else. And everyone has the same pre-game upgrade options. How you choose to set up your loadout, which will determine what options you have in the game, is up to you and needs to be done pre-game. But everyone has those same pre-game options, so that eliminates the randomness there. It's not randomness as in just coming across a gold scar, for example. This makes it more skill reliant as well. You got to kill more players to get more resources, so that you can upgrade your weapons. And electronics are a very, very cool aspect to the game. As I said, there can be a small random element to it if they're automatically generated by the game, but what you do with your electronics is entirely up to you, and everyone has the same pre-game options. You can select 3 options for in-game as to what you can do with your electronics. They all give you a kind of superpower within the game, and that all really will determine a large part of what your strategy is during the game, particularly the late game, where you'll have hopefully all 3 options available to you. And again, it's not randomness, it's not RNG, it's based on your pre-game decisions and your in-game strategy and what you decide to do with it then. Number 2 on the top 10 reasons Darwin Project is better than Fortnite is that every game is different. Now, you could argue that every game is different in Fortnite, but I would disagree with that. One of the reasons why I dislike Fortnite, and one of the reasons why I stopped playing it pretty early on, is that a lot of the games felt kind of samey to me, and I don't have that feeling from Darwin Project. Now, there's a few factors that go into making why every game in Darwin Project feels different, and some of those reasons are, firstly, how well you can craft up your own gear, what you have available to you, what you do in the beginning of the game, where you land, the players that you can encounter in order to kill them and get more resources. How well you develop and how quickly you develop will have an influence on how the game plays out. The second one, your loadout or your build is going to have a huge impact on the game, and you will choose a different loadout or a different build depending on what strategies you want to play in that game. You combine that with your opponent's loadout or builds, and that's going to bring in different factors into how the fights go, and that's going to influence how the games are as well. You're not going to have 2 games where everyone's got the same set of loadouts. It's not going to happen very often, and even on top of that, you will be utilizing a loadout combined with a strategy. Your opponents will be utilizing a loadout combined with their own strategies. So all that put together makes for a whole lot of different combinations that are going to add up to every game playing and feeling different. And the biggest reason why every game in Darwin Project is different is also the number 1 on the list of top 10 reasons why Darwin Project is better than Fortnite. So let's check it out. At number 1, we have the show director. The show director is essentially a TV host or an announcer. So the Darwin Project is this event where 10 prisoners are put into an arena to kill each other on last man standing. So if that's not entertaining enough, you've got the show director who announces and entertains the crowd who are watching. The show director can have a massive influence on the game, and when you've got a good show director, they are hugely entertaining, and you can just find yourself in stitches laughing at what goes on. A good show director will also present challenges and make the game different, make each game different just by the different things that he or she can do and the impact that they will have on the game. The show director has the ability to interact with just yourself. He has a robotic camera that can fly around the arena, so if he's following just you, he can interact with just you. He also has the ability to interact with every player in a zone, and he also has the ability to interact with the entire field at the same time. So that opens up a lot of options for him in terms of letting people know where their opponents are, giving them clues and tips, or also just kind of encouraging people to play aggressively, saying they're going to punish camping. He doesn't just have that ability though. The show director he also has powers that he can utilize to help or hinder players, or to otherwise make the game interesting and more exciting. Some of those powers include warm-up. Part of the survival element of this game is that it's in a freezing cold arena. A big part of the survival element of the game is that you got to stay warm. That involves keeping an eye on your cold meter and building a fire to warm yourself up when it's getting too low. An element of building a fire is that people will be able to see it, other players will be able to see it from miles around. So that's something that you don't want to do more than you have to. And also when you're in the middle of a fight, you try and stop the build of fire if your cold meter's almost about to kill you, and naturally speaking that makes it incredibly difficult to win the fight. So the show director has the ability to put a warm-up drone on a player that can influence a fight, or can just kind of reward somebody who's just come through a battle and won. He also has a heal power, and that can be hugely impactful for obvious reasons. He can speed up, he can pick where an electronic is going to be dropped. That's often used by show directors to encourage several players to run to the same area, and that encourages fights and battles. He can give wood, he can close down zones on the map. So closing down zones on the map is also a way to get players to move closer together. If you're thinking Fortnite, you got to remember that Darwin Project, it is a smaller arena, but it feels an awful lot bigger because you've only got 10 players there. So you don't want people scattered all over the map. In kind of mid to late game, you want to start getting people together and getting battles going on. The show director can influence that. He also has the ability to nuke an entire section of the arena. When the nuke drops, you got 40 seconds. It's tough to get out of an area in 40 seconds. It is doable, but it's tough. So you can have some games where you'll have 1 or 2 or 3 players being nuked by the show director. The show director can actually come away with top kills in the game. There are other abilities, powers that the show director has. The last one we're going to talk about, and the coolest one by far, I think, is the manhunt, where he can drop a manhunt on a particular player. What happens when a manhunt is dropped is that every other player gets a tracking icon so they can see where this player is, and there's a huge loot reward for killing this player. So basically this player, whoever he or she is going to have the entire rest of the arena following and chasing him and tracking him and hunting him and trying to kill him, and that leads for some really interesting fights and battles. Far and away the best games I've played have been ones where there is a good show director. A show director is just another player, so once you've played 10 games in the Darwin Project, you have the option to become a show director as well. So there you go, there you have my top 10 reasons why Darwin Project is better than Fortnite. We all have our different opinions, so if you agree or disagree on any of the points that I made, then say so. Drop me a line in the comments below, because I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on that. If you haven't played Darwin Project yet, I hope this video has encouraged you to at least give it a try, because if you do, I really do not think that you'll be disappointed. If you liked the video, then please like the video. Thank you very much for watching. Take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.